Do you own a dual cam KA? If so, you came to the right place. As most people know, these dual cam intake manifolds, stupid. They are just straight stupid. So I'm gonna show you a couple tricks and tips to make this a little less stupid. Another thing is, when I was learning how to do all this, I didn't know what went where, and I didn't know what things I needed and what things could go. So I'm gonna show you the bare necessities of this. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna show you a couple tricks. I like to call them the fuel line trick, the lower plenum stud trick, and of course the EGR delete, of course, that everybody knows of. Okay, trick number one. This is probably the easiest trick you can do, because you don't have to take anything off, just the fuel rail. So as you can see here, stock fuel rail, you can see all these ugly lines, a million lines, a million hose clamps. I see ugly, and I see lots of points of failure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots where, you know, it can leak, problems can occur, and it's just plain old ugly. So what I do is delete all these right here, delete this return line, this hard return line right here, and I just run a longer soft hose from here straight down to the fuel filter, and a long hose from here down to the return line, the hard return line. So it'll go from that to this. Much more simple looking, and yes, I know this is very crusty looking, but you know, it's gonna get some work done. All right, that was trick number one. As everybody knows, if you have to take this whole intake off in the car, it sucks. Okay, it just sucks. So one thing I do to make it a lot easier is, so the stock manifold has studs right here, which I'll show you on this right here. Studs right here, one stud right there, two, and those studs are too long, because when you try to drop just the bottom, say if you just want to take the whole bottom piece off, it'll hit the oil filter and the starter before it'll clear the studs from the top holes. So you have to freaking loosen the bottom, then loosen the top, jiggle everything, then it's just barely enough to wiggle it out. So what I do is get rid of those studs and just replace them with bolts. So in the car, you can just remove this whole bottom piece without having to touch the top. And a lot of things that people overlook is like old crusty hardware. Like look at that. That's gross. Freaking went online, bought these shiny new FES spec zinc plated fucking, I don't know, it looks fancy. All right, the EGR delete. That's a much bigger job than the other things I was showing you, but you know, it makes the engine bay a whole lot cleaner. You can buy block off plates online for pretty darn cheap. But as you can see here, the block off plate would go right here. So yeah, so as you can see here, there's a block off plate, and so all of these super tiny vacuum hoses, they can all go when you delete EGR. But the bare necessity for vacuum hoses is this idle, this hose right here. That's for the IAC. It's all for the idle shit. So this has to stay. This big hose right here goes through the heater core, and you know, this gets hot, and this is touching your intake, and obviously you don't want hot air. You know, you don't want a hot air intake. So what I do is I delete that, I take off this hose, I run hoses straight from the manifold to the heater core. As you can see here, that hose does not touch the intake whatsoever, and overall just is a lot easier to work on instead of having to mess with the intake to do coolant hoses. And of course, if you don't want heat, like I did for a while, you don't even need those two hoses, so you can just block off this plate and just block off that bung right there. And the only necessary coolant line is this line right here that goes from the top of the intake to a piece of there's a little hole on the block down here. So as you can see, it loops around. So you only need this coolant line, this vacuum line. That's it. I completely forgot to say, these 4 little vacuum hoses going off the bottom of each intake runner, that's for the lower PCV system. So there's one line that goes right off there and splits to the 4, and I'll show you on this manifold right here out in the open. So it's actually wrong. You need, I'm sure you could actually delete that some way if you want, but you need those hoses and the IAC hose. That's pretty much all you need for the vacuum hose and vacuum hoses. And of course, you could throw a filter on the top PCV line or something. Lots can go, which is good news. Here's an example of a couple coolant hoses and lines that I got rid of. So I capped that off. I shoved that cap full of JB weld and shoved that cap on, and been running it like that for almost 2 years. Has not exploded yet, so that's Good. Down here, that's a line that's capped off. Pretty sure this is a coolant line right here, and I just chopped off the ends so it looks a lot cleaner. Right back here, that hole right here, is this right here. This is for the coolant. And again, I deleted all these freaking lines, so I just cut it and got rid of as much material as possible to look cleaner and less shit in the way. And all I want to say applies to S13 intakes and some of the S14, and well, parts of the S14, because the S14 manifolds have way more shit. What I'm showing you is just the S13 intakes, so I'm not sure what you need for S14, but that's a lot more work. I'm sure if you wanted to go full race car, you could delete the idle valves completely and just like run a cracked open throttle plate if you just tighten up the cable. But I ran that for like a week, and when the engine is cold, this thing ran like dookie, and yeah, it would have to be completely warmed up to run good. But when it was warm, yo, the idle was steady as can be. Couple more things. So the fuel injector wires, that is all a complete harness that runs to the distributor, the MAF, and I think like the power steering line or something. Everybody runs it up here like stock. It comes in wrapped in like that plastic black box. But what I do is I run the whole harness through the middle of the intake, and I just run each injector wire through these little holes, and that cleans it up a lot with the wires. And to get the engine bay looking nicer, you know, you can get rid of the clutch fan and put some E-fans in, so it looks a lot more tidy and a lot more open and a lot more simple looking. And this is actually an S14 motor. As you can see, the difference between from the outside, what you can see is S14 has 2 center bolts right here, the S13 has 3, and the S14 has 1 center bolt back here, and the shape of this is much different. You can barely see it, but that's the S13 valve cover over there, and it's just slightly different. So yeah, S14 motor, S13 intake, runs perfectly fine in an S13. Another S14 motor, KA trans, Z31 trans. So yeah. Bro, where the fuck my engine go? God damn. Yo, who stole my motor, bro? Jeez. Oh my god, I completely forgot. If you have to take out these fuel injectors, how the fuck, focus, bitch. These screws always strip. No matter what you do, don't care. Those fuckers are always hard to get out. Replace them with these tiny bolts. Trust me, your life will change after you do that. It looks fancier, and yeah, just do it. All right, just do it. I'll show you this KA while it's out of the car so you can see everything with the intake off, and I'll show you kind of the bare necessities. So this is the lower PCV line. It'll run and split to 4 of the intake runners. This right here is a coolant line that'll go to the heater core. This will also go to the heater core. If you don't want heat and you're going full race car, just cap that off, and just cap that off and block that off. That's another coolant line. That's the line that did a U-turn up to the top of the intake manifold. A coolant passage runs through the intake manifold, so if you're burning coolant, first spot to check and easiest spot to check is right here. I just throw some like RTV on there just to be safe, with as well as the paper gasket. So this video is definitely not the most detailed, not the most helpful, but those are some tips and tricks that I know and not too many people think about, but I don't know. I hope it helped you in your KA24DE journeys. And if you have a single cam, go kill yourself. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm sorry. But yeah, here's my 92 shitbox. It's supposed to look like a Japanese cop car, but everybody just calls it an 8.6 and makes me sad. But yeah, you know, because people are mean. They're like, talk to me, the Mount Akina and shit. I'm like, bro, I don't know. I'm just trying to pull some people over, bro. No, just leave me alone, guys. Leave me alone.